Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. You are listening to a rebroadcast of a previously recorded show.
We're back to Author's Corner, powered by Life Improvement Radio, the Miami Book Fair. You can go to my website, tolltutor.net, for more information. Twitter, Toll Tutor, Neil S. Haley, Facebook, LinkedIn, Neil Haley, Instagram, Toll Tutor, Pinterest, Neil Haley, and Google Plus, Neil Haley. And we continue the process. We're running, I guess I'd say 45 minutes left. I'll be broadcasting, and then I have to say goodbye to the Miami Book Fair until next year. It's been about a 7-week journey. It's been a lot of fun. So I'm so excited to welcome the program author Salar Abdoh. Salar, thanks for calling, and how are you today, sir?
Thank you. I'm well.
Now, tell me specifically how much you've enjoyed the Miami Book Fair. Tell us a little about that.
It's been lovely. I've been here 2 days. I had 2 events. One was for a book called Tehran Noir, a collection of noir crime stories out of Tehran, which I commissioned, edited, and translated myself. And the other one was my own novel, Tehran at Twilight, which I just did the panel for today. And it's been lovely just meeting the different authors, going to some of the panels, hearing the authors read, and just realizing how many amazing authors, writers there are. Because, when you're going about your life, there's only so many books you can read any given year. So when you come here, you go to different panels and you hear people read a bit about their works, from their works, and talk about it. It's just it's an amazing experience to be here.
It's such an amazing experience to connect with those authors, to learn about what they're about, for them to understand and learn about your work as well, and share your story in so many ways. I think is fascinating, and then especially when you guys get to be in one room together, right? Without any of the media, without anyone, and you get to just share why you enjoy doing what you do. You learn so much.
Absolutely.
All right, so Salar, with your book, you said Tehran at Twilight. Tell me particularly some of the background into the book and stuff, for sure.
Sure. Interestingly, I was just I went to listen to a panel of several authors, one of whom I believe may have just won the National Book Award. I'm not sure, but he was a Marine in Iraq, and he wrote 12 short stories about it. And I was sitting there listening, and I've experienced that region from the completely other side. And in the novel itself, it's a novel about it's a triangle of a friendship where the protagonist is friends with this guy who he went to school with in California in college, and they're both Iranian-born. The protagonist stays here in America, becomes a professor, very much like me, and tries to make a life for himself here. But before that, he spends a few years during the wars of Iraq and Afghanistan, traveling the region with the Western journalists and being an interpreter for them. So he knows what's been happening the past decade and a half. But his friend, on the other hand, who calls into Iran, has done the opposite. He's chosen to become a kind of a rabid anti-American, trying to create as much mayhem as he can for the American forces in the region, and thereby working with some really bad elements. So you have this old friendship and its troubles, and then you have the friendship of the protagonist with a former Marine captain of the United States. And one of the main themes of the novel, amongst other things, is the protagonist, whose name is Malik. Really the limits of loyalty in friendship, like whatever he decides to do in this situation, he'll be somewhat betraying the other person. And the novel kind of asks some tough questions about, we sit here far away from areas of conflict, war, revolution, and, it's easy to make judgments on people for various reasons. But, when you're really in the thick of things and you have to make split decisions, whether you're a young American soldier, when you have to decide whether you're going to shoot or not, or the other side of it. These are questions that we don't have to ask ourselves every day. But, so the novel asks that. And then there are other secondary characters, like a overambitious American journalist who, does some who's a foreign correspondent in the region and tries to, do things in order to promote her own career as a journalist by doing some underhanded things. So it's a mix of things, but basically it boils down to, what happened to us here, over there in the Middle East during the war, and its aftermath, and how that plays itself out here in the Middle East, in Iran, and other places.
Yeah, so what's interesting, I guess, at this time is, Salar, you're seeing Iran kind of not be considered being one of our enemies in the last, let's say, 6 months because of things changing in the whole political perspective in Iraq. So in a lot of ways, Iran has kind of gone off the pages of the news, hasn't it, in the last 6 months? So it's good you're bringing up a lot of the factors that are going on throughout that time and place, right?
Well, it hasn't quite gone off the news because, actually in a couple of days, there's a deadline between the U.S.-Iran talks on the nuclear issue. And if that's resolved, it can really change the paradigm of the world we live in today. It can be almost as monumental of a event in history as the U.S., not quite, but almost as the U.S.-China rapprochement was of the 70s. So we're waiting for that, and that's actually always in the news. But what's happened in the last half a year is that, Iran has always often been demonized as a country that destabilizes the region.
Right.
But now people have come to see that actually, in a way, Iran is the only stable place in the region, and in order to stabilize the region in any reasonable and feasible way is to work with Iran and not to constantly demonize it and say we will not work with them. So I'm really hoping that this rapprochement comes to fruition, even though it has its detractors and enemies on both sides, both here and across the water in Iran. But if that were to be, Iran could really be a truly stabilizing factor in the region. So it's very much in the news, but the paradigm has shifted.
Yes, to the
people
point.
Are seeing,
yeah. To ISIL or ISIS being the enemy, and Iran is kind of in the background for the first time when, the political sphere of the elections, the last two, presidential elections, and how Iran was put into this, painted this certain picture. So, Salar, are you seeing in that a lot of ways that your book is bringing to light things that people are not really understanding about Iran and have misconceptions about?
Sure. I mean, the book is both about Iran and also about the greater Middle East and also about the U.S. I mean, as far as Iran goes, the book, it's not a polemic, it's a fiction story. But in this fiction, I've tried to make it a deeply psychological novel while it being a political thriller. So I've tried to really give portray the motivations and the motivations behind the motivations of the various players in the region. And I don't try to paint a pretty picture of Iran and what it is, but I try to paint a picture of a place that actually has far more freedoms than people think, but also a lot of issues, a lot of problems, a lot of corruption that exists everywhere, including Iran. On the other hand, I try to also portray what these wars did and it's their execution did in the region. Whether you agree with them or not, they had some serious consequences on Americans, for instance, on Captain James McGravy, who's one of the main protagonists of my novel. That's very invisible. And, here in America, people support the troops. They have those ribbon things on their cars. But the truth of the matter is that these wars are fought by a fraction of the population. And afterwards, they're not seen. They're not much heard from. Once in a while, they're given some sort of a celebration. Once a year, there's a Veterans Day. But, a lot of these guys, they suffered very acute things. And, they don't get proper medical treatment a lot of times, proper psychological treatment. And this will go on for generations as it did in Vietnam. Now, this is not something I talk about. This is not something I particularly specifically treat in the book. But all of these things are backgrounds to the book, the world of intelligence agents, the world of soldiers on both sides of the fight, the world of mercenaries, mercs, American mercs and British, for instance, who were there, the world of politicians, the world of ambitious and sometimes opportunist foreign correspondents. All of that comes together to sort of, and the world of also the people who become sacrificed in wars and revolutions.
Exactly.
Like my main protagonist's mother and his friend's mother. There are two people that he tries to save at the end of the novel.
Well, Salar, what I'm learning from what you said particularly is when we go into wars in certain places, and I had someone about Vietnam on my show a couple weeks ago, the same type of predicament that literally once they leave, they forget about the people, and then it's like fighting amongst themselves. You said a faction was fighting against somebody, but however, all the people and all the suffering and all the difficulties they go through, even in civil wars as well, it's sad to say the least. But Salar, where can we purchase your book and learn more about you? Where's the best place we can go?
Any bookstore, I imagine. If the bookstore doesn't carry it, it can be ordered. It can certainly be ordered online, all the places you usually go to order books online. And they're both, the Tehran of Twilight is the novel that I talked about at length, and the Tehran Noir, the other book that came out simultaneously, it's not my book per se. I edited and translated it, and I have a story and an introduction in there. But that's another book that sort of gives a vision of Tehran today as it is, with its layers and textures and the life of crime and the underworld there. It's a part of a greater noir series that my publisher, Akashic Books, has put out, and this Tehran Noir is one of the latest. And the both books can be ordered online or go to the bookstore and ask for them.
Well, fantastic discussion. Really would love to have you back, especially to talk more extensively about the book. We'll connect via Facebook and see if we can do that and have you back on to learn about, and also talk about the education system in Iran and in the Middle East and different situations compared to the U.S. All that's fascinating for sure. So thanks again for calling, Salar, and best of luck.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. You're listening to Authors Corner, powered by Life Improvement Radio, and we'll be back in 2 and 2.
Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own and shall not be construed in any way as advice from Life Improvement Radio. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our website. Personal perspectives expressed by the producers, writers, or editors will always be presented as such. Any rebroadcast or retransmission without the expressed written consent of Life Improvement Radio is strictly prohibited. Thanks for listening.